The Cincinnati Bengals are a long, long way from Duke Tobin's stated goal of not just paying more money for the same team. Will they get better? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm Jake Liscow, he's James Rapien, and we are Locked On Bengals, covering the Cincinnati Bengals on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we've certainly been more active than the Cincinnati Bengals, James, in this free agency period.
That's not saying much.
An episode at least every day. And I guess technically the Bengals have made a move a day, but we don't really count the last two for much. If you're new to the show, welcome. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube to make sure you don't miss an episode, because maybe one day the Bengals will do something and you're going to want to hit that bell. So when they do, you're notified when we have our content up to let you know what they've done and how it fits and all of those important things, as the Bengals are still trying to figure out if they can improve their roster before the draft to get back into a place where you feel like the floor isn't going to drop out from under the defense in 2025. And we're still waiting for that big move. The Bengals did bring back Cam Sample on Wednesday, who I think we expected back, and I'm happy to see him back, happy to see him have a chance to make the team in camp. I think he was a solid rotational piece for this defense, coming off an Achilles injury, of course, but still waiting for a move that's going to move the needle, James. And the more we wait, the more frustrating it is for, us, frankly, and certainly all the Bengals fans out there that are clamoring for the Bengals to do something.
Yeah, I thought something was going to happen on Wednesday. It obviously didn't. We waited to the very last second. It's early Thursday morning as we record it. We're recording this, and look, it's frustrating. I get it. I get why people are wondering what the hell is going on. I understand the frustration, not just with now the internal guys, the T. Higginses, the Trey Hendricksons, the Jamar Chases, but the external guys now, because Teven Jenkins, we're exactly where we thought we were yesterday at this time, 24 hours ago, literally. And you're still waiting for Teven Jenkins, and maybe that gets done at some point Thursday morning. But I'm genuinely worried now, Jake, about how much they do in general this free agency period. Like, let's say they sign Teven Jenkins, which would be a nice signing. Are they going to add the second guard that I think both of us agree they should add? Kevin Zeitler off the board. Are they going to add the 3 tech that we're talking about? A lot of those guys now officially off the board. Malik Collins, Draymond Jones, Levi Onwuzurike, like all these guys that it's like, oh, well, that guy could help your defensive front. That guy could help your defensive. And you look up and they're pretty much gone. And so that's where I'm wondering, like, if they only plan on adding 1 guard and we're going to go into the draft looking for a 3 tech and find that defensive penetrator from a pass rush standpoint, then how much more do they have? How much more are they going to do? Because I'm not sure I see many more moves, and it doesn't feel like they've done much. And by the way, they still haven't gotten their stars done. And so that's what's wild to me, is like the big splash, and I say that in quotes, might be Teven Jenkins, maybe. And if it's not, then we're talking about a Brandon Scherf or someone like the Will Hernandez or someone like that. And that's not a splash. It could be an upgrade, but that's not a splash.
I'd be fine with those guys for what it's worth, but that wouldn't be acceptable to be the highlight move of your free agency period. At least with Teven Jenkins.
Done? What if it's Brandon
I'm
Scherf
getting there.
done?
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
If it's Teven Jenkins, at least there's upside. At least you have a young player who's been good. He's had injury issues, sure, but he's been good when he's on the field, and he can still be a part of the team for a few years. If it's Brandon Scherf or Will Hernandez and that's it, how are you better? I mean, you've improved your guard spot. That's great. You got to get another one. You're going to have to do it in the draft. Now that guy needs to start. Or you got Cody Ford starting, or some other player on the
Wilson.
roster that's in a competition for that. Jackson Kirkland. I mean, that's what we're talking about in competition for the other guard spot, if that's their only move, and maybe a rookie, right? And even if they sign Teven Jenkins, that might be the conversation we're having. Because when you look at what I'm guessing is a remaining cash spend for this year, big question on Trey Hendrickson. But if they were to somehow get back to the table with Trey, figure it out with Jamar, figure it out with T, that's about $40 million in new cash for those three guys.
Mm-hmm.
Add another like 16 or so for Teven Jenkins. Sure, you get some money back if they make a decision on Jermaine Pratt, who's still on the roster right now. But that's about all the money that I projected them to spend in cash in 2025. So where's the other move? Are they going to outspend my expectations? Is there a pivot to some of these guys that are still out there as we're about to enter day 2 of official free agency, day 4, when these guys can sign, like Julian Blackmon, Asante Samuel Jr., a different position there? Looking at some defensive backs, Justin Simmons, the safety, are those guys that they're interested in talking to? Is there another defensive tackle that maybe will cost a little bit less, but maybe they think can help rush the passer? Have a hard time finding that guy on our list of free agents. Certainly down in tier 4 before
It's
you get
Calais
there.
Campbell. It's the only guy.
And Calais Campbell.
It's the guy.
But where I'm concerned right now, James, is like when I look at the money,
yeah,
like it's not telling a story that there's another move coming, and that is concerning right now.
it's it. It feels like it's going to be one guard, and then you're done, like pretty done. Like that is. This is supposed to be like an era-defining free agency, era-defining offseason, a set the tone for Joe Burrow and set the table for Joe Burrow for the back half of the decade here. And it's like, all right, well, you can't trouble yourself to get 2 guards. And I don't think they will. I think it's going to be one. They couldn't trouble themselves to get a 3 tech, knowing that injuries happen. Who cares if the draft is good at that position? What if Walter Nolan is gone before you want to take him? What if some of these guys, what if you don't get to defensive tackle until round 3? I think that's what's scary to me is they're like backing themselves into an area where, oh, well, you need an interior pass rusher for sure. You could use some help on the edge. Yeah. Like, so do both. Get a veteran and go into the draft. Like this idea that, oh, well, they just need to sign one for Alex Kappa. No, they benched their left guard at the end of the year. Cody Ford is a fine backup. He's not a starter. And we've seen what happens when they draft linemen. It does not usually go well unless they're freakish Amarius Mims, right? Or a center in Matt Lee, who I think we think has upside, but we haven't seen yet. Like it's wild to me that this, like, how is this the plan? And I really do wonder, like, if we can't be alone here. Like, and I don't mean from a fan base standpoint. I wonder if you gave truth serum to the coaches, how they're feeling right now. Al Golden, you think he feels really good about the pass rush? You think Scott Peters, who was at Georgia's Pro Day on Wednesday, you think he's feeling great about, Cordell Volson and Cody Ford? Or do you think if you said, hey, we can get you Teven Jenkins and Brandon Scherf, how do you think he'd feel then? Because if you did that, let's say you get Teven Jenkins, you're planning on doing that anyway. And then it's like, oh, do you have enough money for Scherf? Well, if you cut Cordell, you're saving over $3 million in cap space.
Yeah.
Put that towards Scherf and get Brandon Scherf in town too. Like, it makes so much sense to do that. And I really don't think they're going to, but that's the standard we should hold them to.
Or what is the market for Will Hernandez if Scherf is going to be too expensive on a 1-year deal?
Or Shaq Mason. Shaq Mason is like fine. And if a rookie takes his job, but another one,
And I wonder where the market is on those guys, earnestly. Kevin Zeitler getting $9 million for 1 year is actually more money than he's made in quite a while. And when you adjust for inflation, maybe it's similar to what he made on the 2021 3-year deal from Baltimore, but that's a sizable deal for him.
And it's also with Tennessee. Tennessee tax of winning 5 games next year, you know?
And with a coach that he's familiar with in Bill Callahan, who had him in Cleveland. But the Bengals did not call Kevin Zeitler. And it's got us wondering what's left here for the Bengals to do as they're trying to help themselves get back to a championship caliber team. We'll continue that conversation coming up next.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Certainly not to free agency. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, all of your spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. It's easy collaboration. You can manage your money with your partner smoother than ever. So you and your spouse, you want to get on the same page. You want to be able to manage things and have a view of everything. You can do that all in one convenience. Instead of juggling all these different apps, Monarch Money can be your go-to for all things finance. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL. Again, half off your first year at monarchmoney.com. Monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL.
We've talked about this offseason much the same way we've talked about last offseason in describing the importance to the Bengals' future, the importance of reestablishing something to build on around Joe Burrow, around the stars of the team. And the stars of the team being in the air certainly throws a wrench into things, as we still expect the Ja'Marr Chase deal to get done. There's questionable reporting on T. Higgins from Cameron Wolfe on Wednesday that deal was not imminent, and Trey Hendrickson doesn't sound like the Bengals are getting what they're asking for there, as they're hoping for resolution on that question. And that will certainly impact things from a money perspective that I talked about earlier, as far as whether or not another move is coming. But I'm just struck thinking, James, about the failures that have led to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that me sowing meme, the tweet from 2019, about how awesome it is when you're sowing and how bad it sucks when you're reaping what you've sowed. And I'm just thinking about, yeah, man, the Bengals sure sowed themselves in bed. You got Jackson Carman in the second round, Zach Carter in the third round. You're waiting for Dax Hill to finally find his position and permanent home, and Miles Murphy to develop. And you're not getting extensions done early with your stars. And you watch Jesse Bates become an all-pro with another team. You got Trey Hendrickson requesting a trade 2 years ago. You're in a second straight franchise tag situation with T. Higgins, and you've missed on your free agent acquisitions to try to replace players that have left. Sheldon Rankins, Nick Scott, Lael Collins, go down a list of offensive line tackle experiments that have failed. And this is where you are now, where in a year where we talked going into this free agency class a lot about how difficult it was going to be to find significant improvements to your team in this free agency class because of the quality of the group of players. And there's still guys out there that can improve the team. And we've talked about them in this episode. It just makes me think of that meme, man. Like, the Bengals made all of these mistakes in team building through the draft, through free agency, through misses, through decisions on their own guys. And now we're in this spot where, even with Joe Burrow on the team and the elevator that he is, and having a few pieces on the offense, certainly more than a few when you include the guys that are not necessarily on the deals they want to be on, and Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins, and we're still in this spot. We're still wondering if they can get a defense that can get to playoff contention. That's a crazy place to be, quite frankly, and shows years of ineptitude that have led to, again, a crucial moment that so far this Bengals front office hasn't been up to the task for.
They haven't lived up to it at all. And I wonder what's going on in that room. You think Duke Tobin went to the combine and said the things he said, thinking that they'd be here 3 weeks later, a little over 2 weeks later, a little over 2 weeks later? I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's they're not better anyway. Like, where are they better?
They're not.
Like,
Straight up
like,
not. They're banking on development right now so hard.
yeah, like, all right, Al Golden's not a miracle worker. Did you watch last year? Like, I get it. It can be better and improved. Like, the only spot they're better is that they actually have a nose tackle.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, well, that is not even the minimum. Like, that's the obvious. Like, it's one of those where if they're really just planning on adding a guard and that's about it, and then kind of adding around the margins after that, it's unacceptable. And it's going to be one of these off seasons, if that's what happens, even if they get their stars done, that if things don't go the right way in September, October, November, December, Joe Burrow is going to think about March and what happened in March and who you drafted in December. But the March factor is so huge because he's seen the drafts over the past couple of years. He doesn't want to be going into August banking on a young guy to be a huge factor. You just can't, because there's wild cards and you just never know how it's going to play out. Hopefully you have hits and it's a bunch of Eric Alls that come in, earn Joe's trust early, and by mid-camp it's like Joe's face lights up when Eric Alls mentioned. Would be great. How realistic is that? You just don't want to be in that position. And so that's what I keep coming back to. Like, you're frustrated, I'm frustrated, we're going to be critical. I think there's some frustration within the building, but can you imagine what Joe Burrow's thinking? And he's trying to win a freaking ring. He knows how hard it is to get there. And right now they're in a much worse position to get there than they were in December, than they were in January. Obviously, they didn't qualify for the playoffs, but just from a roster standpoint, they haven't even taken care of that, what should have been the easy stuff. And the easy stuff is keeping your own guys. And the external stuff, if you're just adding a guard and that's it, just one guard. Well, TJ Slayton, Oren Burks, Osai, Hill, Pirine, Wilson, Sample, and a guard, that can't be your free agency. And yet it feels like that very well could be their free agency, which is just frightening if that's the case.
Now, that's technically not paying more for the same team, but it's pretty damn close.
Pretty close.
It's close enough. It's close enough for it to count to me. Yeah, you've improved a guard, and that is important. Don't let my tone fool you. It is important, but that being all they do with the issues they had on the defensive side of the ball is simply not enough. And like I said, they're in this place or trending toward this place, and it doesn't necessarily need to go that way, right? Like, there could be a couple of other moves. There's still some guys out there that could be important rotational pieces on the team or even starters. And that's outside of the guard position where there are multiple players that fit that bill. But the way that it is trending and the concern is that they've painted themselves into this corner where they're going to have no margin for error in the draft and in development and for injury. And this team does not look like it can handle a no margin for error situation. The offense probably can, assuming that Joe and T and Jamar are on the team and they have their tackles and they have Ted and they have all those pieces on offense. They have Mike Gesicki back. But is that enough? BJ Hill was talking in his press conference about the defense playing better at the end of the year against a bunch of bad teams, but they were playing better at the end of the year. Is that where they are in the building? Are they buying that? Because that is worrisome.
You know what that is? That's some mid-2000s Bengals Carson era. And I'll trademark this now. I've started saying the Carson clock. It feels like we're in like 2008 of the Carson clock. And Joe isn't going to be as patient as Carson was. And so pretending that, this change in defensive coordinator. I remember when Chuck Bresnahan was going to save the Bengals defense. And by the way, this has nothing to do with Al Golden. I think Al Golden is going to help. I think changes do matter. I do think that the coaching staff is going to be better than it was last year and just be more in sync. And great. But you still need talent. And you can't just get that talent in the draft because you're in win now mode, not rebuild, retool mode. And you can retool in free agency. It's modern day NFL. Windows can open very, very quickly. And this was about the Bengals opening the window, the championship window wide open. And they have not done that so far in free agency. We'll continue the conversation coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And maybe you think, James and Jake, y'all are crazy. The Bengals, they are going to make it to Santa Clara. They're going to make it to Super Bowl 60. Bullish on Joe, bullish on Jamar. I'm not sure anyone's there right now that's listening or watching. But if you are, you can get on all of the NFL future bets with FanDuel. And of course, March Madness is here. My Bearcats, well, they went out with a whimper. But if your teams are in it, or if you want to get in on all of the March fun, do it right now with FanDuel, where new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com right now. Again, FanDuel.com, where you get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on all of the college hoops action, all tournament long.
I do want to talk about what the Bengals can still do in this free agency period to salvage it, because like I said, it's not over. We don't want to dunk too hard on them for something that isn't over yet. Can dunk on them for the failures that got them to this point. And I think I was pretty clear on that with my rant to start our previous segment, James, with all the mistakes that led to this moment, not getting some of these deals done when they had an opportunity to get them done, to have so much more financial flexibility this offseason. Like if you're paying Jamar and T and Trey last offseason, you sure do have a lot more resources this offseason to make sure you get the guys you need in the free agency class. Maybe one more upgrade that you've ruled out financially that you probably didn't have to, but that's besides the point. But the other thing that stands out to me before we talk about what they can do that may still help us to move the needle, or help us perceive that the needle can move in 2025 to be more accurate, is the magic that seems to happen when we leave the house, James, doesn't seem to work so well anymore, man.
Oh,
I've been leaving my house at least once a day for a couple hours. I know you've had a couple things.
Today, I went to the gym, and then we went to Matry just opened up a place at Summit Park in Blue Ash, like where the old airport used to be. And dude, I thought for sure we were going to get, because you were basically leaving when I was coming back home.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, there's definitely going to be something that happens. And I was constantly looking at my phone, constantly looking. Nothing happened. Not literally nothing happened. I was just stunned. And yet here we are. That's why we pushed the show. That's why we're recording so late. And now into Thursday morning, I was like, something's going to happen. Like, there's no reason we should record early. Something will happen. Well, joke is on me, Jake Liscow.
Both of us. I mean, this is 2 days in a row. We've waited until late. And for what? I mean, now again, I'm going to wake up on the West Coast here sometime when there's a 6 on the clock and not be able to fall back asleep because of the adrenaline rush and cortisol dump that's going to happen when I'm like, oh, where's Teven Jenkins signed? Surely that's happened this morning, but no. And then I'll just be tired.
I'm going to be tired too. Talk about that. Oh, don't remind me.
I literally fell asleep for like an hour this afternoon. Nothing happened then either. The magic of us being unavailable, spurring moves, I think is past. But Teven Jenkins would help us think that the team's gotten better in a particular spot. Teven Jenkins would join TJ Slayton in improving the Bengals in one specific area at guard and at nose tackle. Calais Campbell, we mentioned earlier, that would help. Julian Blackmon, I mentioned earlier. I think that is a much more remote possibility, but I think that would help improve the safety position.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hopefully that's where they go. Like, I don't think that they entered free agency thinking, oh, well, we'll upgrade safety. But maybe they look at it and they say, okay, well, if we're definitely going to address that 3-tech spot, the interior pass rush, well, let's at least get a safety to kind of stabilize that room so we don't have to. Because as of now, it's like, well, they want a pass rusher early, probably two. They want a safety relatively early. They want a guard relatively early. Like there's only so many early picks, Jake,
Yeah, two.
to get all this.
Two of them. And they had this idea for a trade with Trey Hendrickson, but then that creates another hole, and that doesn't
A
seem to
huge
come
hole.
together. And we still need to see what's going to happen there, right? Like if he's gone, then man, I feel like the tenor gets worse, and I don't have a great feel for what's going on there. The silence could mean, and the fact that all these teams have spent all this money could mean that a trade return in some way, shape, or form is more likely. But
yeah,
just to continue on the list of things the Bengals could do to improve their team, I think a lot of it is at guard at this point, and maybe finding one more edge rusher. And I mentioned Dennis Gardeck yesterday from Arizona, who has been a very productive designated pass rusher. There's some other guys that could come in that role who could maybe give you something. Morgan Fox, another one that's had pretty good pass rushing productivity from the Chargers. And if they wanted to go younger and take a swing on an upside guy who would probably be a 1-year prove-it deal, Kalavon Chason would fit that mold. But
do it.
The number of players that you could talk yourself into making the Bengals better in 2025. I mean, that list is short and getting shorter probably by the time people are listening to this episode.
Yeah, it is. And that's like Joseph Tryon Chiranka. And I might have got it wrong, but Joe Tryon, former first rounder, signed with the Browns for like $4 million. Like those are the type of flyers, like just one of those guys, just another guy, like would have been nice. I would have preferred on the interior. I just think it's harder to find, and I know you could find it as a rookie, but it would be nice to get one more there. But adding those type of pieces can make a difference. That's why I think 2 guards versus 1. That's probably like a $6 million difference. Like it doesn't have to be a huge number. Shaq Mason, maybe even less than that. And by the way, former teammate with Ted Karras, like I think it would make a lot of sense if they're worried about money. It's they can still add and it be a very, like if they went Campbell, Calais Campbell, Teven Jenkins, and or Will Hernandez, let's say, and Brandon Scherf or Shaq Mason, and you get 2 guards that you think can start, plus you had a proven defensive lineman, I'd feel pretty good. That isn't crazy money here. We're not asking them to go get the huge free agent that's going to command a ton of money. Like these are just solid moves that can really change their depth and the way they can operate this for the rest of the offseason and in the draft. And that's what I want. I want unlimited flexibility. So if a safety's there at 17, you're comfortable doing it. Or if it's, because that's the number 1 player on your board, or it's a pass rusher, great. Or it's a guard, great. That's fine. Like go with the best player available. And right now I think they're pretty stuck going edge / defensive tackle with their first pick. Like
maybe first two.
And maybe. And that's just a really crappy position to be in. And you could easily miss doing that if you're going to force it that way. And they may have to.
And they've put themselves in this position seemingly on repeat lately, where it's pretty easy to say, well, last year it was going to be a tackle. Amarius Mims made sense at this time of year last year.
Yeah.
We talked about it for a long time. We're probably going to be talking about Walter Nolan and Derek Harmon and James Pierce and Mike Green and probably some guys you're less interested in the Bengals drafting at the edge position, probably for a long time. And they're going to need a linebacker too. There's no linebackers out there that are very exciting at this point. So the list of needs still exists. And the list of guys that can make you better is getting shorter. And that doesn't mean they can't find a reclamation project and win and find that contributor that way. But the margin for error right now feels slim. It was always slim. Don't get me wrong. It was a bad free agent group, but doing nothing for 2 days, except for bringing back your own guys on close to veteran minimum deals, Cam Sample, Marco Wilson. That's just not enough, man. Not for the standards that we were hoping to see them hold themselves to this offseason, the standards that we were holding them to this offseason, the standards that Joe Burrow's holding them to this offseason. And they got to turn it around.
They do. And they need to be aggressive. I keep trying to hammer that part home. Aggressiveness is the difference. Aggressiveness wins. I know people that are going to feel the same exact way. Hopefully Troy, Katie, Duke, the powers that be do. And obviously we're not going anywhere. We're around. Even though we went out, Jake, we were around, and we'll be back later today at some point. Win, lose, or draw. Hopefully it's a win. Hopefully there's some moves to talk about.
We'll continue to stay active even if the Bengals don't, but let's not do that again, please. I'll believe it when I see it, though, man. You're talking about stay aggressive. You're talking about the standard you hold for them, and I'm firmly in believe it when I see it at this point. The way they're structuring contracts, the way they're spending money. Hopefully we have something to talk about to you coming soon here
what
on
year is
Locked
it?
On Bengals. Like 1993? Unclear. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.